Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul Speak. Today, we'll be talking about healthy relationship expectations.
I am so happy to be back, although it doesn't seem like it in the editing and recording world. We have not made an episode for like a month or 2 months.
Yes.
With great news. If Grace wants to share, like I just totally threw that out there. Anyway,
She's already put me on the hot spot.
I know.
If I want to say,
so
everyone's gonna be like, "What is it? What is it? Tell us, Grace."
That's what happens
What is
when you
it?
don't rehearse. Damn it.
Yes, I have had a baby. That's why we have been
Yay!
off for like a month. Woo!
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're coming in on high because Grace and I always talk before. We can talk to each other for a long time, and we have. And we were talking already before the recording started, so we're already on high. So yeah, my name is Rachel, and I've got my wonderful, wonderful co-host Grace here. God bless you.
Hi.
And before we start getting into our talk, I just wanted to, I like to get our Instagram stuff out of the way early so that, you know, for those who don't stay around can actually hear and search us in other avenues. So my Instagram is The Sassy Rachel. I am a writer, I am a poet, and I am creating a class for young adults who have experienced trauma and how to navigate the world with that type of blueprint. And Grace, you go ahead.
That was amazing. Sorry, I was thinking the whole time when you were saying that about your workshop and everything that you're doing. I was like, oh, you need to do a YA, a book, a novel for young adults. That's based on all of that stuff. I'm literally just thinking about all the stuff that you need to be doing, and then you can do this, and then you can do that.
Thank you. That's why I got you around.
Going off on a tangent, but yes, back to social media. You can find me guys on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Grace_Kugrena, and you can also find me on Instagram at _reading_hideout. I am a kid lit author. I do children's picture books from ages 5 to 9. And you can find me there and my work there as well. I have 2 children books that you can find on Amazon, as well as Kindle, free on Kindle. And yeah, you can find all my artwork there and all my books and every upcoming projects, storytelling times, school trips, everything that I do. So you can be able to find me on Instagram as well as Twitter. Yeah.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Grace. And the wonderful work that you're putting out there and inspiring me. You are an inspiration to me.
Oh, thank you so much.
You are. You're welcome. Yeah. So, introduce us to this topic for today.
So, Rachel and I, as she was saying before, we are constantly just chatting. And cackling, essentially. What we do is talk and laugh and scream, to the point where my husband just sent me a message saying, "Stop screaming, I can hear you from the living room."
Damn, yo. Sorry,
We're that loud.
Chris.
We were talking last week about a topic that we felt quite strongly about, and it's really about our expectations being crushed because we place our values, or we place our being, essentially we define ourselves through the eyes of other people, which then strips away our joy, which strips away our happiness and causes us pain and brokenness, because a lot of the time people don't match our expectations. People disappoint us, they let us down, they don't conform to the idea that we have of them. And a lot of the time that's us projecting and also them projecting on us. It goes both ways. And the reason why I brought this topic up is because I had I don't want to say an altercation, I had a situation with someone who I knew. And I realized, I don't even know if it was something they did. It was it was mild and, what'd you say? Quite subtle. Yeah. It was quite subtle what they did, but it affected me so much that I didn't understand why. And the whole week I was trying to figure out, why is this person upsetting me? Why did they make me feel a certain way? And when I was talking to myself about it, what I had realized was it was my problem and it wasn't their problem. And I will start us off. Reason being is I had an idea as to who, not just who I thought this person was, but who I wanted her to be, and how I believed she should have treated me. And all of that was based on my own wants and needs and desires, right? That person couldn't have known. And even if they had known, what's it to her, essentially? She doesn't care. Do you know what I mean? But the idea of that not being met crushed me. And I really understood that I was placing my joy, my happiness on someone else's hands, right? My needs, my wants, my desires, wanting to be appreciated or wanting to be loved or wanting to be accepted, whatever it was, I was giving that power to someone else who had no idea that they caused me this type of hurt or, you know, caused me some kind of pain. They were living their best life. They didn't know I was feeling this way. I was literally internalizing everything that they had done / not done that I would have wanted them to do, and making it more about myself, but saying they were the problem. On the surface level, they were. But when we scratch deeper, I was the problem, because I was internalizing someone's actions and behavior and hurting myself with what I thought they thought of me, whether it be true or not. All of these ideas was stuff that I was conjuring up by myself. Hopefully I wasn't rambling, audience, and you all understood what I was saying. But essentially, that's what I wanted us to talk about. How and why do we do these things? Because what I realize is the end result always leads to hurt and pain and disappointment and fear. And for me, I think it was more rooted, and I think we're going to touch upon this later on, rooted on past traumas. And I think you touched upon that as well. Past traumas, past experiences that we have all been through. And as soon as something like this happens, we gravitate back to that past self. And for me, at that moment, it was rejection. And that was something that I've struggled with my whole life, right? Being rejected and being made to feel less than, being made to feel like I wasn't good enough. And usually this was in a friendship group. I don't know, you know, what other people's experiences are, but for me, it was within that friendship circle. I had a great relationship with my family. I had great relationship, well, for the most part, great relationships romantically. But I always found that being left out, being outcasted, not being accepted, being marginalized in a sense where it's like, we can hang out with everybody apart from you, or being made to feel like you are only going to be in this group for such a period of time until we don't want you to be in this group anymore, which was evident and which would pan out that way. So being made to feel like you're not part of or you don't belong, that's always been something that's kind of always made me feel bad about myself, to the point where now as an adult, I'm constantly just weary of people in friendships. Do you know what I mean? So to have someone who I thought, you know, were very cool, were okay, everything's all right, and for them to treat me that way, it really just broke me. I really felt like I was, I don't know, 11 or 12 again, where it's just like, oh my gosh, why do I feel like I'm in high school, or why do I feel like I'm in the playground?
Can you describe the subtle behaviors, Grace, that you were recognizing?
Yeah, the subtle behavior was ignoring you and giving you the cold shoulder in the midst of being in a group, right? So there could be 10 of us, and this person's talking to everybody and not talking to you, or acknowledging everybody and not acknowledging you, even though you know you haven't done anything, you haven't upset them, you haven't said anything offensive. Well, I would hope you haven't said anything offensive. And if there is something that you have done, downplaying it and making it seem like it's irrelevant. But when someone else does the same thing, there's this overcompensating of joy and adoration for this person when you've literally just
passive aggressive crap. I hate that.
like all of these different things where it's like I would give all of my attention to someone else and not, really making it, really trying to make you feel small.
Yes.
Minimizing who you are and minimizing everything. And I think to myself, wow, I thought I was crazy. And that's another thing I want to tell our audience. Like, Rachel and I were very, very intuitive. Not when I say we're psychics or anything like that.
Son, damn near.
No. Very, very intuitive, because I was like, okay, I feel this certain way about this person, so I feel like this is what they're doing. And then I was like, you know what, let me give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe that's not the case. And then that's when they would do the comparison of, I'm going to make her feel this way, and I'm going to give all of my energy, all of my attention to this person and make her feel rubbish. And I think that's when the shoe dropped, where it's like, yeah, you have a problem, and and I'm that problem for you. I just don't know what it is that I've done. Right. But again, going back to the beginning, my question to you, Rachel, as I round this off is, why and how do we do that? And how can we not only learn, grow, develop skills or tools that will help us, but really, try to understand ourselves and actually just separate ourselves from those types of experiences, scenarios, behaviors, whatever it is that you want to call it. Feel free to jump in now, because I think I loved it. I loved it.
You gave a great background on what it is that we're going to be discussing. So I'm not going to answer right away, because I always go the scenic route. I'm going to say this is one of the things I really like about this podcast experience and the stuff that we talk about. I feel like we're kind of like the Seinfeld of podcasts, because it's like, it's subtle situations and situations that we go through that they bother us when they're happening, but it's easy to put in the background and not see that, hey, if I get to the bottom of this thing, this can actually help my life out. So just the highlighting of kind of subtle situations sometimes that kind of traverse through different areas in our lives. So I really like that about the things that we talk about.
And that was a great analogy, as I'm the biggest Seinfeld fan.
Yes. Like, you see somebody in the light, they're cute, but then at another light, they're not cute. I mean, that's a real thing. Because that's one of the Seinfeld episodes, but it's like, how many times do you get the opportunity to discuss that? So I like this, because in my opinion, anybody can relate to what you're saying. And you've taken the time out to not only be aware of your feeling, but to put words to it and to help others. It helps others. It helps yourself. It helps others. This awareness.
Yeah, you have to, because it's like you're in a place where it's like, you can't just feel for the sake of feeling. Yes, our feelings are important, but we need to know why we feel the way we feel. And we need to know what is the driving force behind those emotions.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But off to you.
Very well said. Yeah. So I appreciate that aspect. And for me, I can say I'm going to share what my experience has been, what I have learned, because a sister analyzes so many situations. I also do a lot of reading of my own. I also I do a lot of analysis of self and inventory and that kind of stuff. And I find that it has done me well in life. So this is where this is coming from. First of all, I can't stand, passive aggressive behavior. Really, who can? But what I appreciated about your situation is that you did not ignore it, because I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do, especially when I was younger. if I had an intuition about something or I felt something, it was almost easier because of these subtle behaviors to ignore it. Or when you're speaking to someone else, they're like, oh, it's probably not a big deal. I learned to stop reaching out to certain people based on that. Because even when not a relationship, even when a situation is quote unquote not real, it still requires examination,
For
not
sure.
you just, like invalidating what it is that I'm feeling. Because it could be something like, yes, it wasn't happening in that situation, but why am I thinking about it that way? Not that it's someone's responsibility to, help you get to your highest level of, understanding, but I don't like invalidating someone's feelings. So, I like it that you you thought about it, you gave it a benefit of the doubt because you didn't say this is what's happening immediately. You said, I feel like this. Let's observe. I love that. Because you're watching pattern. I'm a pattern person.
For
Like,
sure. You have
yes,
hit the nail on the head.
yeah. And for me, that has been healthy. It gives me, so to speak, data to work with.
Yeah.
It's like, go ahead, Grace. You want to say something?
No, I literally was like, that's fabulous.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, I'ma see how many times this happens, or this is in my area of awareness. I'ma see if it continues or if it's just me or whatever. So not quickly reacting gives you that type of purview where you're like, all right, let me see. So as you see the behavior occurring and not denying your feelings and not reacting immediately, to me, these are all things that gives you like a foundation of something to work on. So now it's like, okay, I feel like this. I don't know why I feel like this. This is the behavior that I perceive. Let me go see what I can do with it. And to me, speaking to people that you trust, people that are credible, either therapist or great friend or a credible source, these are how you can unpack those things. So I think you did great with that so far. So that behavior, having seen that, and understanding, or how can I say this, aligning the right responsibility in the right place. So it's like, all right, I didn't like this behavior. So one thing I do want to say is definitely no one can make you feel any way. And I remember hearing this, and as I get older, I understand it. A person can behave however it is they behave, but no one can literally make you feel a certain way. So it's like you can separate the behavior from how it is that you feel. So them making you feel a certain way is assigning power to them over your feelings. So
exactly what I was trying to say. How is it that you, like, at that moment in time, I was like, how is it that I've given this person power?
Right.
For me to feel so trash? Because essentially the first reaction was, you are out to get me. You're there trying to make me feel bad about myself for whatever reason.
Right.
But this person had no idea because I didn't approach them or confront them saying, this is what you've done. I was just watching and waiting and analyzing, as you said, to try and figure out what the situation was.
Right.
But I still felt like trash.
Yeah. Which in my opinion, people do intend to do that. So it's not like your perception obviously is wrong, but it's like, yes, you can set out to do something, but it does not have to have the effect that you set out for it to have. So that's when it's the assigning the right things and the right feelings in the right area, so to speak. So it's like, okay, this person is, and I like that. This person is doing what they're doing. You know, they're being passive aggressive, they're paying more attention, you know, to me, to others. And, you know, like when it's me, it's either they're downplaying something or, you know, their reaction is not as joyful or whatever. That is happening because I watched you do it. Okay.
Yep.
Then it's the whole thing of, yes, why do I feel that way? And it also depends on the relationship, right? If it's a person who's closer, obviously it's going to have a stronger impact, but nobody wants to be ignored or, you know, treated as if they're not as celebrated as others or treated as an outcast. Nobody likes that. And then is you've identified, you know, as far as the rejection is concerned, you know, having had that experience before. So for me, I've had experiences in my life that I will call, they get recycled. Like I've had experiences with people where it's like, this is happening again. This is the same thing.
But with different people?
Yes.
Same scenarios, but different people at different times.
Yes.
In life. Okay.
Yes. And for me, when I notice that happening, or I've seen it happen enough in the past years to be able to analyze if there is a difference in each experience. And I mean to say that, like, has it changed? Is it something where my emotions are less affected? Do I feel stronger? Like, I try to see how I felt in the situation before as opposed to this situation.
Also, sorry, can I just interject there? I also feel like it's important to know if the lesson was learnt the first time around.
Which is what I'm getting at, because that is going to determine how strongly, in my opinion, how strongly you feel in the next scenario. Because if you learned your lesson sufficiently, your feelings should be less irritated. You should be rubbed wrongly less. Even if you still don't feel great, your strong feelings should be more diminished. And if it's not, it's a lesson that you definitely still need to learn. And it's going to happen again, basically. Because these are things, I think these are things like, let me say for me, my experience with asking for what I need. I'm a person who, I'm a giver, right?
Yeah.
And I've learned this from being the oldest child. I've learned this from, you know, giving to my siblings. I've carried it into my friendships. I've carried it into my romantic relationships. And these are situations that I continue to draw to me, but as I am getting older and my experience with this is getting more mature, I recognize how much I'm now asking for reciprocity in my behavior and in my energy. So I had a situation where I asked a person for something that I needed, and that within itself is difficult for me. So like even there, I saw a maturity. And I asked for what I needed, though I kind of stumbled through it because I was trying to figure it out, because figuring out what I need is something that I don't normally do. And that person was not able to provide what it was that I needed. I felt ashamed. The first thing was shame.
For even asking, right?
For even asking. So the first thing was shame. And then I thought to myself, well, at least I did ask for it. And I cried. The person didn't know I was crying. This was over the phone. And I cried. But I also didn't react to the person. So I was able to go through my level of emotion. You know, so I cried, I felt the shame, I cried, and then I thought about it. Hey, I was able to ask for what I needed. I also deciphered through, you know, like the reason I was feeling the shame it had nothing to do with the fact that I was asking for what I needed, because as a person, you ought to be able to ask for what you need. That's how you get what you would like. So asking for your needs is not something bad at all. So that was an old belief that I needed to work through. And once I was able to go through that, I was like, oh, then it's okay. This person can't provide what I need, but I still need what I need. So it's okay to need what I need. But then now I can step away from that person because they were clear about the fact that they could not provide that.
Yeah.
So like coming back now to your situation, to me, it's like to separate, and you did the rejection from childhood, you know, from friends, in friend situations. This is something that you are accustomed to. So were those situations valid back then? They were valid. You were made to feel like an outsider. Why did those things happen? To me, those are the important aspects. Why did those things happen? Were they situations that were incurred by you? Were they situations that's just by them? So you assign the correct responsibility to whoever it belongs. So if, and I'm not saying this, but if you were a douchebag, it's like, okay, I need to work on that aspect of myself. And obviously that's not clear, you know, as to, but I'm just saying, you know, if the onus is on me, then I've got to work whatever I can and be aware. And that's not to say I have to be perfect, because obviously we can't be perfect, but it's like you have an awareness of if you are behaving a certain way that is obnoxious to others, you're going to get a certain reaction from individuals. So at the very least, it's like, oh, there it is again. I said this, and this is the type of consequence that happened. I said that, and like to have awareness, and then, you know, maybe you can say it to the person, hey, I know I have an issue with this. So if I ever come out this way, please let me know. Or please, because that's to me how you put someone in on your, what you know are your weak points. And let them know, hey, you know, I'm not trying to do this on purpose. This is something I'm aware of and I'm working on, you know? So there's that aspect of it. Then there's the aspect of, hey, if something is bothering you as the other person, you need to open your mouth and say something. And if you don't, there's nothing that I can do. I'm being as aware as I can, or maybe I'm not being aware, but we do have a certain responsibility to, when I'm on the receiving end of something, and for me, it's not acceptable, I say something, because it's not something that I'm going to be standing for. And I know people have issues with being confrontational, so to speak, or standing up for themselves, but then that's an issue with that person.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, because from my own perspective, it's always the other way around. I don't have an issue with confronting people, but I've always found confronting people has gotten me into more trouble than I would like or would care for. Reason being is always being labeled as the aggressor or the aggressive one, just because you're trying to figure out what the situation is. And I think when you're always being put in that situation where you're constantly rejected, and then you confront the situation, and then you get people who come down on you like a ton of bricks on top of how you feel again, it just makes you feel worse about the situation than you did before. And I think growing up as well, you learn and you try to mature where you tread lightly, not because you don't want to sort these things out, but you tread lightly because you understand how every single person is going to react to you in a different manner when you do approach them. Sometimes we don't care to approach people because, you know, I don't care, essentially. You know, you're not worth my time. You know, some people, you just get to that point where it's like, you're not worth my time. I don't care. And then there's some people where, and not even some people, sometimes it's places and environments that you're in that's quite sensitive. where you're literally like, okay, if let's say, for example, if it's in the workplace, you can't just say what you want and, you know, there not to be consequences. So you really need to gauge the environments you're in, gauge the type of people you're with, and speak their language to say, you know, like, what is it that's going to be quite responsive in how I approach them? How is it that I can get them to sit down and talk with me and not be, you know, fearful that you're about to attack them, or when you just want to have a mature conversation. But what I have found is when people start to act passive aggressive towards you, but are still in your circle per se, is very much different than someone thinking you're a complete douchebag, because human nature says we will just separate ourselves from people like that. You know what I mean? If you're a douchebag, I have no intentions of being your friend. If you are a cunt, right?
She spelled it.
I'm telling you, because look, I am a born again Christian. Like, I'm trying very hard to hold my emotions in. But if you're, because I would outright just say it, if you're being like a little, like, people will literally sever ties with you. You know, it's no big deal. I don't need to be around you. You're trash. You're awful. You make me feel bad about myself. You're constantly bullying other people or whatnot, right? But I feel like there's a difference in passive aggression. Do you know what I mean? People still stay around. People still linger, but they're always throwing shots. And I think we spoke about this or touched upon it a couple of episodes ago when we was talking about enemies and frenemies, right? Someone who's going to give you a backhanded compliment. What? Someone who's going to throw shade or whatnot, and then be like, "Oh, no shade," and it's like, "Yeah, but
that shade.
Where is that
you
coming
have to
from?
Say no shade.
Exactly.
No
Exactly
shade, but there's shade.
that. Yeah, but there is shade. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like those are the things that kind of linger, and it's not a clear-cut thing where it's like, I don't F with you anymore. We're not friends. We're not. Do you know what I mean? Or I'm going out of my way to make you feel bad. Someone who doesn't want to be around you, they don't need to do that. They'll be like, all right, I'm not interested in you know, being in some kind of friendship or an entanglement with this person. Do you know what I mean?
I do get what you're saying, but I do think that people can, so there, with people's personalities, right? There are things that, like, say you're not gonna like everything about a person's personality. Like, you can like, I don't know, 80%, and then, you know, a situation happens and that person doesn't know how to handle it. The average person would behave, to me, would be passive aggressive about it rather than confront it. And to me, those are the things, like, say you were a douchebag about a situation that happened. You know, it's like, we have a great time, but, you know, you exploded at such and such point, and I don't know how to address that. To me, that is when passive aggressiveness would come out. It's, yes, I like aspects of you, but there is something or situations that has happened that I'm not comfortable with addressing. So I'm going to be passive aggressive. Whether you were a douchebag in that stance, whether my view of you now is different because of what happened and I'm not able to address it with you. You know, like, I do think situations like that can happen, and the average person, maybe they do want to sever ties with you, or they don't know how to feel. And in that time period is why they're doing the passive aggressive behavior, because they don't know how to confront in a respectable manner. I don't know, in a manner that they feel they will be heard. I don't know if that's kind of addressing what you're saying.
I get that, but I don't think, for the first point that you said about someone not being able to address how, you know, you reacted to a certain thing or whatever, I don't find that as severing of ties, and I don't find that as being hurtful. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I see that as normal.
I agree with you, but I have to tell you that I'm usually on the receiving end of someone who's not able to handle that. I can have a confrontation where it's like, oh, I didn't like a situation, and I'll address it. And for me, I'm fine afterwards. I find most people cannot do this.
Wow.
I don't know if that's your experience, but to me, like, unless it's in a close relationship, like intimate, like with a husband, where it's like, oh, you feel like, I don't know, it's like something that you're expected to go through. I think that friendships, people don't expect in friendships to go through things like that. So they lean on then either passive aggressive behavior or severing of ties, when a perfectly healthy conversation could happen and resolve that.
For sure. That I
But what's
understand.
your experience though? Like, because I would, and it hasn't stopped me. I do recognize, you know, that I'm usually the person speaking or bringing it up, and over the past years, I've learned how to handle situations like a bit differently and observe and sometimes not say anything. When something is unacceptable to me, I still bring it up. And however you behave with it, that's not my problem. And that's not to say I'm respectful about it. I am caring. But I have my boundaries. I'm caring about myself. If you're behaving in a way that's not caring to me, I care about myself. So I'm not going to let that affect me, but I am going to bring it up. And whatever you decide to do after that is whatever you decide to do. And for me, that doesn't leave room for passive aggressiveness. You cannot behave passive aggressive with me because I'm addressing that shit.
For me, I think when you have an experience where you are constantly being rejected and then you confront people and they reject you again, I think that's the thing that hurts me the most, because I think it's always meant with I know so many people who hate confrontation, where I feel like naturally someone who's confrontational always attract passive people. I think that's usually the case, right? You become passive, or, you know, it's always opposites attract, in my opinion.
It depends.
But anyway,
it depends, because you and I are both, like, we're not passive.
We're not passive.
At
And
all.
we've shown that, you know, if something's wrong, I'll be like, hey, Rachel, is everything okay? What's going on? And you'll be like, no, everything's fine. And you'll do the same. Is there something, you know, and that's just it. To me, I would rather that than whatever it is that other people do, right? But for me, I felt like when we go back, let's just rewind, like you were saying, taking responsibility for our actions, you know, based on our past behaviors or experiences showing up again in patterns, for us to see if we've actually learned our lesson. I find when I always have issues when I'm center stage. And I think when I was thinking about it, I was like, whether it's done purposely or not, and in my case, I always feel like it's not done on purpose. A lot of the times, sometimes you're pushed front and center stage because someone needs you for something. And again, when you're someone who deals with rejection, you constantly want to be needed, because when you're needed, you can't be rejected, right? Because
that is great realization.
For sure. And because I was sitting going, because like you said, you need to take responsibility for your actions. You can't sit here and say you're perfect in every single way. No, that's not what we're saying. I think when you're wanted, it's easy for someone to not want you anymore, because it's a decision, it's a desire. But when you're needed, even if that person doesn't like you so much, it's like, I need them around. I need to keep them there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So what I found with myself is when you're center stage, specifically if someone's pushed you there, or let's say in a work environment, in a group of friends, someone, let's say for example, you basically are invited to a party and you don't know anyone there, and only one friend who you know is the one who invited you. You're the plus one. You get there, and let's say you meet all these people, everyone's friendly, everyone's lovely. A topic comes up that you are adverse in, and you take center stage because you start talking about this topic. I found whenever that's the case, whether you've done it on purpose or not, or whether you've been pulled into these places or not, everything changes in that moment. So what I found is a lot of the time what I try to do is to overcompensate for stuff like that, right?
This is great
If I
realizations coming out.
It really is, because you really need to see. And I remember, I think I had this conversation with my husband a couple of years ago, because I felt the same thing coming up, but this was in a work environment where I was saying to my husband, I need to change myself. And at that time, I didn't know why I needed to change myself. I didn't know what it was about myself that I needed to change. All I knew was at that moment in time, I was being rejected, and it was like almost like I felt like I was a repellent, like a human repellent. And whatever it is that was about me that was wrong, I had to figure it out, find it out, and change myself in order for me to fit in, because it was an work environment and I needed that job, and I needed to make sure that I wasn't ruffling any feathers, even though I wasn't being treated well. But in my mind, I was the problem, and that was it. I wasn't trying to investigate, what someone else did and how what they did was wrong. It was just, okay, I need to internalize, I need to fix it, I need to change it, I need to do what needs to be done. So being center stage for me, even if it's something small that I don't consider to be anything relevant, so that might be something big for someone else. And it might be something where it's like, you are doing it on purpose. I feel like a lot of the times probably it's like, you're doing it on purpose. Stop it.
But before we move on, because those are like, a lot of what you said was meaty. What stood out for me is like a lot of the thought process behind it, or the conclusions that you've come to, is based out of fear.
For sure.
There's the, I have to be needed. That's out of fear.
Of course.
I don't want to be center stage, or if I am center stage, people are going to be jealous. So that's out of fear. And the constant thought of the rejection and not wanting to be rejected. So to me, whenever you have a basis of going into a situation with fears, like, how can I say, like old toxic thoughts, that is what you're generating in that situation. So your perception is coming from there. What you're cutting back is going to be from there. So that's the whole thing of, like, to come to that recognition. And even if that particular situation doesn't end well, like knowing those things about yourself, so that in the next situation that not only can come up, it will come up. So how do you look at those things differently? To me, those are when the situations change. And if they still keep coming up the same, you haven't gotten it yet, which is no problem. And then as these same situations come your way and you learn your lesson, they will get lighter and lighter until they're not the type of situations that you're attracting anymore. So it's
for sure. For sure, because what you're saying, what you're touching upon is, every other time me trying to deal with these situations, my go-to was conform.
Yes.
Conform with whatever it is that they want you to conform with.
Right.
Pardon me. Change and be the person who they want you to be, or whatever it is that you think or know is upsetting them. Try to get rid of it so that you can make them feel comfortable.
Right.
You can make them feel good.
Right.
Even if it's at the detriment of your own happiness, values, I don't know, perspective, desires, well-being, all of those different things.
Right.
Whether it's your fault or not, my whole thing was to appease the situation and pacify the other person.
Right.
And okay, calm down. Let me try and fix it, because I didn't want to be further rejected than I had already been rejected before.
Right.
Even though it will cause more rejection, the irony of it, that's what would happen.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because people didn't care.
Right.
It wasn't their problem to solve. It's more, I don't want to be around you anyway. I'm like, no, please don't reject me, please don't. And it still happens anyway. And you're just like, no. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting. But the other day, that's when I was thinking to myself, okay, I really need to sort this out.
Yeah.
And thank God for prayer, because I was like, Lord, whatever it is that is within me, just reveal it and let it come to the forefront. Let me know.
Great prayers.
And I had to, and then I was going through all these things that was in my head, and I was like super, super focused and like going, why do I feel bad? Why do I feel bad? Why do I feel awful? And in that moment, I was just, the whole day I was just distraught.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to sit down, and I think I heard a voice say, why are you upset? And I was like, oh, Jesus, really? Is that what you're asking? Well, you know why I'm upset. You know why I'm upset. But when I really sat down with it, I realized my, what do you call it? My response to it was all wrong, because I was this close. I was on the verge of going back, regressing to how I would have reacted before, and was about to do the things that I used to do before in order for me to put a plaster or a Band-Aid on it and fix it, which wouldn't have fixed the situation.
That's a great place to me to pause and like take that in, because you were close to there, but you recognized it and you didn't do it. That's huge. As little as that sounds, that's huge.
Yeah, it was insane. Like
that's great.
I didn't even get in contact with the person. I didn't even and I didn't feel as bad as I used to in regards to the duration of time. I had a conversation with Rachel when I was saying to her, look, it's very difficult for some people to let go and forgive, because they let things linger. It's not just about being broken and hurt about something, but holding on to something for a long period of time when they shouldn't. And when I mean by some of us, I mean me. I'm talking about myself, right? Where you're constantly replaying things in your head, replaying scenarios, replaying situations, and trying to see it in so many different ways and perspective. But the more you're doing it, it's like you're opening up a sore wound all the time, and it's not healing. And you're just constantly hurt over and over again. You don't know why, but because you're picking up that old wound and whatnot. And in terms of this was something that didn't linger as long as everything else in the past. In the past, I will spend days, months, depending on how hurt I was about it.
What did you do differently?
I didn't do anything.
That's why.
It was different. I didn't do anything. As in, I didn't approach that person. I didn't speak to that person.
That's different. That's already different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I meant like I didn't actively do anything. Do you know what I mean? That's what I meant.
But what I meant was like, so you reaching out to speaking to people about it, you reaching out as far as, there was another thing that you said, like, turning it into, like really what is happening here, not what am I supposed to fix here. Those things are all different. Those are huge things.
Yeah.
That are different.
That's what I did.
Yeah. You didn't react. You didn't like make it where I have to fix. Well, and that's okay, because you need to feel it. You need to feel it, yo.
For sure.
You need to feel it, not deny it, but you also like, you didn't approach the person, and you also didn't look at it like, hey, I need to fix something. Nah. You looked at it like, this is what the situation is. You observed it. You saw the person was ignoring you. You like sat back. You felt your feelings. You got upset about it. You spoke to people, and then you were like, hey, it's not me. It's how this person is behaving. But I'm also not trying to make it better and cling on to them. How can I make this better?
Yeah.
Those seem like, it's almost like, it's like a positive behavior. So that's a good thing to do, but it's not, because you're trying to essentially, and I'm saying this because I've done it, you're trying to manipulate the person's reaction to you when you do that.
Yeah.
Because you want them to like you.
And for sure.
It doesn't seem like a negative thing, but that is a bad thing to do. Not bad as in, oh, you're bad for doing that, but bad as in, if you're trying to work for someone to like you like that, they already don't like you. You already not in the plus with them.
Literally.
Ain't nothing you could do.
It comes from the place where it's like, but why? Do you know what I mean? I think we have that conversation.
I know.
Why
I didn't do anything.
I am charming and fabulous.
Yes.
You know
How
what I mean?
could you not? What did
How,
I do? So
literally,
all this
we just
manipulation
met.
is going on.
But
And
this
there's
is
no
the thing.
accountability for that person. It's like, yo, if you're ignoring me and you feel a certain, negative way, there is responsibility on your end to
Yeah,
approach me. I can't be doing your work. So when I'm manipulating your behavior, I'm doing your work. And
yeah,
that will never go well. Like in a relationship, that person has to do their work. You have to do your work. If you're doing
yeah.
that person's work for them, you've already lost, and vice
Right.
versa.
I'm telling you, I was like, these are the feelings again, like you said, trying to make people like you. And I think a lot of the times when you start to feel like that, a lot of the times the reason why you try to cling on to those things because you feel cheated. Hey, if you just took the time to get to know me, you would realize how awesome I am. Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
and
It's like,
it's like
what?
you losing a good friend because I am great. You losing a good
Bruh,
friend, that's your
I,
decision.
you know what's really insane? It cracks me up because it's like my reactions when I was growing up as a kid. It's a great, it's a great thing that you mentioned Seinfeld because I felt like I was always George Costanza because he would overreact to
Ah!
everything, and I would literally be like, what's going on? You know what I mean? I would lose my nut, going, Jerry, why is it that they like me? You know, why don't you like me? And I would think to myself like, I love
Ah!
him. He's literally my favorite character in Seinfeld, but I relate. I
Funny.
relate to the overreacting of certain things. And his whole family's like that. And my whole family's like that as well, where they're always yelling and screaming and shouting, yelling at each other. I was like, but I'm fabulous. What is the problem? But then I realized it's not up to me. You can't do all of these things. I think the hurt comes from being cheated, of not giving the chance, giving, you know,
Yes.
when there's certain people who just have that blockade right in front of you
Yes.
where it's like,
Yes.
I don't need to get to know you. I've already decided I hate your
Correct.
face.
Correct.
And you're like, what?
Yes.
You know what I mean? I think that's what hurts more than if someone gets to know you and they realize you're trash, that's fair. But if someone doesn't really want to,
But
engage in all that stuff, I realize.
that's also ego. And I'm saying that for myself as well, because
What do you
you expect, like, you're going to like me. And
mean? Of course.
that's ego as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm the same way. So I'm not saying it in a judgmental way.
No,
But
I
it's
totally agree.
also like your ego is like, nah, you're gonna like me, and how could you not like me, type of thing.
I like
Like, yeah,
it.
exactly. And then it's like, hey, everybody has the right to feel
The way
however
they
they
feel.
feel. And hey, I think you're wrong, but it's not my job to prove you right. It's not my job to prove that for you. I still
Yeah.
think I'm great. And basically you're losing out on a good thing. That's how I look at it as, oh, you don't want to get to know me? Good. I don't have to burn as much energy because I give my friends a lot of my energy and my time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's more time for myself. Like, it's like, oh, like, so, and I've learned this for me, one of the most difficult relationships that you could learn that with. I
Yeah.
learned that through keeping boundaries with my mother,
Correct.
because your relationship with your mother, in
Mm.
my opinion and in my life, has
Mm.
informed how I feel about myself.
Mm.
No, that's the first relationship, or one of the first relationships you learn how to feel about yourself. So if your mother treats you lovingly and caringly, that's how you're going to feel about yourself, because that teaches you. You model after what you learn from the closest adults around you, even with how you feel about yourself. And
Mm.
throughout most of my life, I realized I was treating myself as the closest adults in my life have treated me. So if they haven't treated me well, which they did not, I felt that way about myself. Like, I didn't feel like, I was competent at doing a lot of things. I didn't feel like being loved was something that I deserved because of how I was treated. I was treated to earn love and to run
Mm.
after it, and all that
Mm.
whole, making people like me and all of that. That's how I was raised, because
Mm.
the adults around me were never pleased with me as I was.
Mm.
So I learned much older, like, oh, how my mother feels and how she behaves, I correlate that with how I feel about myself. I had to
Mm,
separate that. Like, okay.
mm,
And I did that just recently. I drew a boundary with my mother. I'm like, and I had to tell myself, Rachel, you are valuable. You are
mm,
loved. You are, like, I had to tell myself this because I saw myself get in the vacuum of how could my mother treat me that way, that the
mm,
person who brought me into this world. Because for me, I felt like when I was doing that, that was also accepting, if she treats me that way, I deserve it. How could my
mm,
mother treat me that way? But my
mm,
words to myself was this time, hey, my mother has issues with her emotions,
mm,
so I'm not going to allow how she treats me to
mm,
inform how I feel about myself. So
mm,
she has problems, but I'm
mm,
over here, I still love myself. So
mm,
I'm not going to let you treat me like this. Number
mm,
one. And number two, I'm not going to let your behavior inform me how I should feel about myself.
mm,
And I had to
mm,
actively say that to myself. So to me, it's the same with a person who either likes you or dislikes you. It's like, I'm not gonna let how your passive aggressiveness and all of what you're doing inform me about how I feel about myself. You don't like me, and that's great for me to say out loud. You don't
yeah,
like me,
yeah,
but you don't like me. I like me. And
yeah,
I have to behave in a way with myself that I like me.
yeah,
So if that means even for, because for me, I would just, if that relationship, if it was worth it to me, I would ask them if they were okay. If not, I would just like pull back for me, because I
yeah.
can't be around the person that's treating me with a wall, because I need to be around people that treat me well because I treat myself well. That's how I feel about me.
Or people treating you with contempt. Because a lot of the
Ain't
time,
nobody
you
gonna be
know,
around you.
I'm telling you, because it will be like, my sister's always said, look, sometimes people just dislike you because of how much other people like you, right?
Right.
And that's a big statement. And also, I was saying to Rachel, my husband was saying, look, a lot of the times we yearn for these connections, we yearn to be around these people, but why is it that we never feel or think to ourselves, do these people deserve our time?
Right.
Do we really want to be around these people? Why are
Right.
we not selective in who we choose to be around? Why are we not selective in the friends that we yearn and desire and seek for? Why are we not selective in these types of relationships? Because a lot of the times these people we're running after are not good for us. They won't benefit us in any way. They're
Right.
not going to add to our spiritual growth or our mental growth, emotional growth, all of these different things, but we don't take the time to see that. We're just chasing after ghosts. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Um, but yeah, so that was essentially his questions that made me think. And then I remember coming to Rachel going, why don't we do it? You know, why don't we do these things? Why don't we question when we get to those moments where we feel that rejection, we feel that hurt, we feel that pain, or that person made me feel a certain way, you know, they dismiss me or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Do I really want to be around you? Why
Right.
isn't that our instant thought? Instead of hurting ourselves by talking down to ourselves, maybe they're right, maybe we do feel trash, you know, maybe we are trash. Like you were saying with the situation with your mom, you
Mm-hmm.
internalized it first before you started to put
Separated it.
boundaries between you
Right.
guys, right?
Right.
You automatically was like, she must be right. I must be a failure, or I must be
Right.
useless in the class. But she's, you know, these little things. Why is it that in those moments we don't think, well, do I really want to be around you? Are you really worth my time? You know, are you the type of friend that I'm looking for, or the type of relationship or connections that I'm trying to make? What is wrong with us, Rachel?
I think
Dr.
that
Rachel,
I
what do you
think
do?
I think that because of how, as a child, again, how you're taught to think
Yeah,
about things, you learn from a model, from people modeling. So
yeah,
at some other point with us, we need to learn how to not model. And this is an unlearning. It's a, how do I come to this thought process for myself? So I do think you can come to a point where we do pose those questions automatically, but it has to be work because we're unlearning how we usually think about ourselves. Because naturally, you're going to, like, kids who are treated like they are precious and loved and cared about when they're younger, that is how they feel about themselves. But you know, that also still is dependent in the way of thinking about ourselves. It's not like us thinking about ourselves our own way. You get what I'm saying? Even though it's positive.
Yeah.
It's we have to get to a point where it's like, even if somebody likes me, that does not speak about my value. My value is not in someone liking me or disliking me. My
and you're
value,
not defined by it.
Correct. I'm not defined by what somebody else thinks, whether it's positive or negative. Obviously, when it's negative, it's more obvious. But even when it's positive, that can cause you to be a people pleaser, because then you always want to be liked.
Facts.
So it's like, how do I think about myself, not with how others are thinking about me? And I think with my mother, I was able to do that more easily because it's a negative thing. I mean, obviously I'm older and but also in a positive way for us not to find value in people always liking us, because that's also a problem within itself. How do we think independently about our own selves? And I think that's what the issue is. Like, how do you think independently of your own value without the others' opinions weighing heavily on how you value yourself?
Yeah, I found that things have been positive for me when I've been alone. I think it can be
obvious.
kind of for sure. You know what I mean? Like when you're surrounded by people, it's easy to be swayed sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to be swayed, whether it be negatively or positively. It's easy to be swayed, depending on the impact it has on you and the influence it has on you. But I think having that self-awareness usually comes when you're alone, because you have time to think, you have time to meditate on things, you have time to really talk to yourself, you know.
And for me, reading, I've done a lot of reading.
Yes.
Because that's like codependency behavior. That's what that is.
Yeah. And I thank God for that, because I find that the cycle always comes with you meet new people, you get accepted temporarily, you get rejected, and you go off on your own. And when you go off on your own, you learn the most. You evolve, and then the cycle begins again.
Or if you're with a person who can handle the conflict, you can learn through it together.
For sure.
But usually that's not the case.
Exactly. Usually that's not the case.
I get it.
And then you learn again.
Yes.
And then you start to reflect again.
Right.
And then you start to look at the points where, okay, I excelled in this area of this lesson, but there was another part of the lesson that I really didn't pay attention to. I need to relearn that. It's almost like retaking modules.
Yes.
It's university or something, right?
Exactly.
Constantly. I passed this module, but I failed the other one.
Yep.
You know, I need to take this other module, but I failed this one. Until you actually pass every single module so that you can graduate. Do you know what I mean?
And that's how come I know for sure these situations is going to come again. I know it. It happens to me all the time. Whatever it is that I have issues with, that joint comes up constantly until another repeat thing comes. But these things are on repeat until you learn your thing.
I'm telling you, man. And that's what I've been learning. Like, it's always tough lessons, but the ones that sting is the ones that you need. I say this all the time. If a lesson stings, it's working and it's something that you need and you're growing from it. Agreed. If it doesn't sting you, it's not effective enough.
You know what I mean? You already learned it then. Like, it's not going to elevate you because you're already up there.
For sure. So in these types of situations, we've already spoken about, not being defined by the people that were around, not being defined by positive or negative affirmations or conclusions about ourselves, right?
From outside.
from outside influences, right? From people who either know us or think they know us or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as if, you know, once confronted with these lessons as they're coming up time and time again, do you feel like, first and foremost, you learn fully and then the lessons stop? Or do you think this is life as we know it? Is it always going to be like this?
I think you
forever?
learn fully. They still keep coming, but you know how to eliminate it fast. So it's like you said, with this situation, you would have thought months, but this time it was days. Then you'll get a situation where it's like a day. Then it'll be half a day. Then you'll look at it and laugh like, look at that. That is what I used to get upset about, but you'll still see it. It'll become like that. It's like,
So it doesn't stop even when you've learned? It's just a reoccurring circumstance?
I think it stops becoming a lesson, but you don't stop seeing it. You get what I'm saying? It's like,
but what would the reason behind that be? If you've already learned, why would it keep on coming up?
Because we're in a damaged world and we're gonna keep seeing these different types of things. It's like,
that's Rachel's way of saying people are effed up.
Can you imagine not seeing a passive aggressive person ever again in life? Really? This is gonna happen. But it's the effect on you is gonna be like, oh my God, remember, you'll even laugh about it. You'll be like, hey Chris, can you believe that? And then it'll be something where it's not even like, it won't affect you in that way at all, but you'll see it. You'll see it on TV, you'll see it in passing. Then, you might have someone of your friend who brings it up. Your son may then bring it up and it's like, Mom, can you believe? And you will have peripheral experiences with it, but it just won't affect you that way. But you'll have new things obviously affecting you strongly.
Life. Oh my gosh, life.
Yeah.
Life. So with that being said, this is when we're gonna bring it to a close, unless you have something else.
No, I'm good. I thought this was really great. I love this podcast.
You guys need to see Rachel's face. She looks like she is on cloud 9. She's literally like floating and glowing.
I'm very grateful. This is a therapy session. I'm like, I hope people get, fruits out of it, but even if they don't, I do every single time.
I'm telling you. And look, Rachel, I want to thank you so much for your perspective, because you've really unraveled and peeled the layers of this onion. Do you know what I mean? Of really how to not just navigate through these circumstances, but truly how to see it in a different perspective, where it's not constantly internalized, where you think your way is the only way, your perspective is the only perspective, and how the other person might come across, or what their intent might be, or how they might feel. And maybe there are blind spots that we have.
Yes, we do have blind spots.
Exactly, where we feel like, we've been wronged or we've been slighted, and it might not be that way, and also teaching us that it's okay to feel when we have our emotions.
Man, you must feel. Not okay to feel. You must feel. If you ain't feeling, you're not gonna get to any place in that. You might just have to keep going through that just to experience the feeling part. You must go through the feeling.
Instead of letting people diminish how we feel and dismiss how we feel. I think that's a big thing for our listeners who have joined us today. But really understanding that emotions are not always bad thing. I think this world makes us feel like, oh, you're too emotional, or you're too, why are you always getting upset? Well, it's got nothing to do with that. We're human beings. We were meant and created to feel. We have emotions for a reason.
You must feel.
And you have to feel.
You just don't react out of them things. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't
let it control you.
Right. But you have to go through the feelings. That's where I learned.
Close to the microphone. You have to.
You have to. Really?
I was like,
Really?
what's
This is
happening?
Oh my God.
What's
You
wrong?
have to. And
I'm
really, you
telling
can't be
you.
listening. If there's one thing I'm learning, there's several things I want to say, Grace, and this is all in the closing. You can a 30-minute closing.
Curtain calls. She's like, open the
Yes.
curtains again. Open the curtains. One more thing. And one last thing.
um, in life, where society is concerned, if you are in agreement and follow just what society tells you, like, and this is like, oh, this is what I thought, oh, this is what I saw on TV, oh, this is what you screwed.
Yeah.
You cannot, like, you just cannot go with those things, like, and it's like whenever you have a thought process and you're like, well, that is how it is, those are the ways you can tell that's a society thing, that's how it is, that's how I always thought it was. If you don't have a reason for thinking the way that you think through something, examine that, because that right there can get you in trouble. That's one thing. Another thing is, it's so important to have people that you can credible people that you can go and talk to, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a sister, whether you can't be doing life on your own. You're in trouble if you're doing that. Like, building a team is important. And if you don't have one, because I haven't always had one, I basically just continually ask God. I asked God, like, I really need a team, God. God, help me. I really need support. So it's not something where if you don't have it, you'll be like, oh, then I'm screwed. Nah, God can help you, you know, to gain one. But you need that because of the blind spots and everything that comes in your way in life. You need a strong, supportive, healthy team.
And you don't also want to create an echo chamber. And I always say to myself, you can't ask advice to yourself when yourself is broken, or yourself is not thinking clearly, or yourself is a mad person.
It's
you know what I mean? In those moments when we are detached, or when we are not balanced enough to make our own decisions or the right decisions, you can't talk to yourself, because you would just affirm and confirm all of the negative thoughts that you have within yourself, or the negative emotions. You need to speak to someone who is unbiased, who, you know, can be able to see things clearly and have clarity, who can be able to help you out in those circumstances.
And maybe that's something we could talk about in another time, like how to build a support system, because this was a problem for me. So I think that's important. You can't just be telling people something is good to do and you don't give them the how-tos.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Agreed.
Okay. Well, this was awesome. I am on cloud 9. This has been Rachel.
And this has been Grace.
Yes, and on Soul Speak. And you can find me at The Sassy Rachel at on Instagram. Yeah, I didn't even come out saying that right. But anyway, The Sassy Rachel, Instagram. I write poetry. I'm always self-reflecting. I'm putting together a class, a workshop for youth who have experienced trauma and how they can navigate through this thing called life.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yes.
Fabulous.
And Grace. Come on, Grace. Your credits.
Yes. You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Grace_Kugrena on Twitter, essentially. I've already said that twice. You can find me there on Twitter, @Twitter, from Twitter.
Is that Twitter?
Twitter, yes. Did I say Twitter? I mean Twitter.
By the way, I noticed how you said Twitter and I said Twitter. Twitter. Okay, start over because I totally interrupted. Sorry, go.
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is @Grace_Kugrena. And you can also find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is @the_reading_hideout. And I am a kidlit author. I write children's books, picture books, for children the ages of 5, give or take 4, up to the age of 9. My work is online. My books are on Amazon as well as on Kindle, so you can be able to find me there, check my work out. And I write my books, I edit my books, I illustrate all of my books. So feel free to have a look, feel free to find both of us, comment, give us a shout out, tell us whatever it is that you think, and say hi. We would love to hear from you guys.
Oh, and shortly, and not on this one because I don't remember our Instagram for Soul Speak. I will give that next time, our Instagram for Soul Speak. It has been a pleasure, Grace, and an honor.
Always
Thank
a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
bye.